International rights organization called for the need to protect civilians in Ma'rib, especially children. Houthi mines continue to claim lives of people in newly liberated areas in Hodeidah. Military experts are voicing concerns over the expanding use of drones, especially by terrorist groups. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rana Swaidam. A civil society organization called for international action to protect civilians in the city of Ma'rib, especially children and women. The organization condemned Houthi targeting of a school in Harib district with drones while students were leaving, which resulted in injuries. The organization called on the Houthi militia to stop bombing civilians and making children a target of war, calling on the international organizations to carry out their duties towards the civilian victims of war. An international organization stated that 302 Yemeni families were displaced within a week. The military escalation of the Houthi militia continues to pose a growing danger to hundreds of families in a number of Yemeni regions that are experiencing tension. A report issued by the Rapid Displacement Tracking Tool of the United Nations documented the displacement of 202 families at least once between the 13th and the 19th of February 2022. The military escalation in Ma'rib has aggravated the suffering of displaced people, especially during winter. New waves of displacement head every day to and from the city, while international organizations warn of shortage of aid. The following report has more details.
Houthi military escalation in Ma'rib has led to dire humanitarian situation, especially with regards to displacement. The Executive Unit for the Management of IDPs camps in Ma'rib said that since the beginning of last September, about 54,000 displaced people have been forcibly displaced from the southern districts of Ma'rib. It criticized the failure of the UN and international humanitarian organizations towards their repeated calls for relief to thousands of displaced people who are crowded in the governorate. In light of the inaction of the relief organizations and the militias ignoring calls to stop the escalation and find safe corridors for civilians, information on the humanitarian situation in the areas affected by the confrontations in the governorates of Ma'rib, Shabwa, and El Bayda is still limited, as the militia imposes restrictions on movement and requires special permits to leave villages due to the bad security situation, with the relief organizations confirming that the situation is more dangerous in the south of Ma'rib, in particular the districts of Al-Abdiyah, Harib, Al-Juba, and Rahaba. More than 4,200 people have fled from the last three districts in September, most of them heading towards safer areas in the governorate center Ma'rib, where these areas host large numbers of displaced people. The escalation of the Houthi militia in the districts of Al-Juba and Al-Abdiyah during the past days has impeded the ability of civilians to travel inside and outside the area, as well as preventing the humanitarian aid from reaching them. The Executive Unit pointed out that the humanitarian needs gap is widening in all basic areas, which the local authority in Ma'rib is trying with its limited capabilities to save the lives of thousands of recently displaced people and alleviate their suffering. The international and local organizations also called for urgent action to provide an emergency and urgent response to the newly displaced and to quickly reach the affected families to alleviate their suffering, especially with the onset of winter. From the wreck of war to the tragedy of displacement, Yemenis keep suffering and risking their lives in order to find safer areas for their families and children to live in, with no safe place to go to.
Local sources in Morais in Qataba district confirmed that a student was killed and another was wounded in tribal clash in Al-Dala. The sources reported that the two students were injured after the bullets reached the campus and classrooms of Uqba bin Nafi' school, and this led to the death of one of them due to his severe injury. The joint forces thwarted an attack by the Houthi militia on their positions northwest of Al-Dala Governorate. According to a military source, the Houthi militia launched an attack on the positions of the joint forces, and the confrontations resulted in the killing and wounding of a number of Houthi militants. Government forces thwarted a Houthi attempt to regain positions in Sada Governorate. It prevented Houthis from circling around some of the sites they have lost recently in Al-Safra district. The forces pointed out that their strikes inflicted losses in lives and equipment on the rebels, while the rest of the militants fled. The coalition said it carried out 45 operations against the Houthi militia on various fronts of Hajjah Governorate. It pointed out that the operations destroyed 21 military vehicles of the militia and inflicted heavy casualties on them. The coalition forces also destroyed 4 stores of ballistic missiles and drones in Al-Mahwit Governorate. Houthi militia killed 5 civilians and injured 1 in the explosion of mines and projectiles of the Houthi war in Sirweh and Harib west of Ma'rib. The Yemeni Landmine Observatory stated that 4 civilians were killed as a result of a projectile explosion of remnants of war in Ajarim area, and another civilian was wounded when a Houthi mine exploded in a civilian transport vehicle in Harib. Mines planted by the Houthi militia have killed and injured thousands of civilians, including women and children, in several Yemeni governorates. Houthi militants were killed and wounded in violent battles west of Taiz. Field military sources indicated that the government forces fought violent battles against the Houthi militia in Al-Ahtoub area, Jabal Habashi district. The sources confirmed that the battles resulted in death and injuries in the ranks of the militia. This comes a day after the destruction of a PMP vehicle belonging to the Houthi militia in Ghurab area. Joint Forces engineers continue their job at a high rate to clear Houthi mines from the newly liberated areas in Hais Axis south of Hodeidah. Military media of the Joint Forces reported that the engineering teams removed and dismantled hundreds of anti-armor mines during the past few days. Military media added that the work is continuing to purify the liberated areas so that their residents can return to their homes and carry out their work in their farms safely. Houthi mines continue to claim lives of innocent civilians, especially in the newly liberated areas from Houthi militia. In Hais, locals who have returned to their homes have become victims of those militia mines. The following report has more details.
Hais, the city that refused Houthis' presence by sacrificing its sons who refused to subject to the militia. One could hope the city had a breath after having lived for a long time in a dark tunnel during the militia control over it. Houthis didn't leave the people of the city free, and they pointed their weapons towards its sons with deep-rooted hatred to kill and destroy. Observers believe that this is the language of the weak in war dictionaries, while the international community and decision-makers turn a blind eye to what is happening to citizens in Hais, from killing, bombing, and displacement.
Houthi militia shot weapons towards my house and caused explosion which dreaded me and my kids while we were sleeping in our room. Even doors and windows exploded.
The 10-year-old child Bassam Uthman and his cousin Mukhtar Qaid were injured as a result of a projectile thrown by the Houthis. Their parents were not able to rescue them after the injury due to the limited care possibilities as their area lies in the mountains.
My son was shot and his cousin was injured too. We can't find safety here.
The parent arrived after more than 10 hours to the medical point belonging to the Joint Forces in Hais, and his son almost passed out before he was taken to Makha hospital. As for Bassam, the projectile turned him into pieces and assassinated his childhood without any religious or moral consideration. Terrorist crimes put the Houthi militia in the circle of accusation through the deliberate bombing of civilian neighborhoods in Hais and its newly liberated villages. The militia doesn't seem to stop their terroristic crimes, especially in Hais, as they are exploiting UN silence regarding their crimes in their advance. It even encourages them for committing more crimes against civilians.
The Houthis kidnapped the assistant head of the media attaché Abdulrahman Saif al-Sharabi, who works in the U.S. Embassy in Sana'a. The Houthi militia began a campaign of arrests that targeted a number of U.S. Embassy employees in Sana'a since last year. This campaign started coinciding with the Houthi storm on the embassy's headquarters when they replaced the guard with their affiliated armed elements. U.S. Navy Vice Administration Brad Cooper, who heads the Middle East-based U.S. Fifth Fleet, announced Monday that it would launch an unmanned naval drone task force to support allied nations in the region and patrol key oil and shipping areas. The fleet's area of operations includes the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, and Yemen Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. Speaking to the Associated Press, U.S. Navy Vice Administration Brad Cooper expounded on the Fifth Fleet's latest work, emphasizing that Iran is considered by the U.S. to be the primary regional threat in the Middle East. With the recent Houthi attacks on UAE and Saudi Arabia, military and strategic experts have started voicing concerns over the expanding use of drones, especially by terrorist groups. This made a large galaxy of experts convene in Abu Dhabi to discuss this issue. The following report has more details.
Recent events have shown the growing risk of drone attacks by terrorist groups in the region, such as those launched against the UAE by Iran's backed Houthi rebels. The Unmanned System exhibition, which began in the UAE capital with regional and Western military and industry representatives, including from the United States, Britain, and France, addressed the importance of developing unmanned aerial systems for civil and military uses, but also acknowledged their dangers when used by groups posing a threat to the region. While the exhibition will include the most cutting-edge high-tech drone technology, the host country has warned that such weapons are becoming less expensive and more common. Radical groups and terrorist organizations can use drones as their weapon of choice in carrying out sabotage and destabilizing actions, since they can be manufactured and modified from inexpensive and commonly available parts. This explains the wide use of drones by groups such as the Houthis in Yemen. So far, options to counter drones have seemed limited. This is due to several considerations, most notably the drone's great ability to infiltrate the skies of targeted countries. By working to send drones in swarm formations, Iran tries to further complicate the task of thwarting its attacks. Such incidents have again raised concerns about the dangers of drones. Some are difficult to detect and require a complex process to shoot down without causing any casualties.
They also emphasize. Coming next. In the International Mother Tongue Day, Amharic calligraphy is recalled again.
راتب الواحد 120 ألف، والكيس الدقيق ب18,000، والكيس السكر اليوم ب20,000. كم يعني بيعطي هذا الراتب كامل بكيس سكر وكيس دقيق؟
المواطن اليمني يعيش في أزمة إنسانية وغذائية مؤلمة من غلاء الأسعار وفحشة الأسعار وغلاء الصرف والعملة الأجنبية في البلد.
حالتي الحين حالة لما خرج المنديل 12 كيلو ما نقدرش ناكل الأكل داخل، ما إحنا بحاجة صعبة.
Welcome back. February 21 is the International Mother Tongue Day. It's a day in which people give appreciations to their native language. Within this, Arabic language has a famous Amharic calligraphy which dates back to ancient centuries. More details are in the following report.
International Mother Language Day recognizes that languages and the Sustainable Development Goals focus on leaving no one behind. There is growing awareness that languages play an important role in development in ensuring cultural diversity. Yemeni activists celebrated the National Day of the Musnad Line, which falls on February 21st every year, using the hashtag International Mother Language Day. Intellectuals called on the Yemeni authorities to make the Day of Musnad Line a national day to be celebrated and to revive it as a civilization and historical symbolism in Yemen, with the aim of protecting the Musnad Line after centuries of destruction and loss of history. Yemenis revived Musnad Day in conjunction with the International Mother Language Day, where social networking sites were ablaze with Musnad writings. The Musnad script is the most prominent symbol of Yemeni identity. The alphabet of ancient Yemeni language consists of 29 letters, and the word Musnad means authenticated writing or documents. It's an ancient writing system that developed in Yemen.
The International Federation of Journalists urged the Yemeni president to do everything possible to save the lives of 4 Yemeni journalists on Houthi death row. The 4 journalists were arrested in July 2015 in Sana'a, and the State Security Court, under the control of the Houthi militia, has sentenced them to death. The Supreme Committee for Public Budgets approved the draft general framework of the state's general budget and the visa ceilings for the year 2022. The committee emphasized reconsidering the current deficit subsidy for economic units and gradually reducing it. They also emphasized reconsidering the stop of organizational structures expansion or creating new units. Official sources confirmed that Marib gas station had stopped working due to its need for age maintenance. The station supplies Marib Governorate with about 40 megabytes of electrical energy, which is about half of its electricity needs. The source added that it was agreed with the German company Siemens to maintain the station, and the Kuwait Fund for Development guaranteed $40 million of the value of maintenance contracts. The unstable national currency, along with the deteriorating living conditions, have added to the troubles of people. Locals cannot secure basic food items because of high prices due to the divergent rial. The following report has more details.
A national currency has the same value nationwide, but in Yemen that is no longer the case. The currency has different values depending on the banknote's date of printing, its color, and design. Such a reality is one of several ordeals created by the war. Over the last 4 years, the government has printed currency that altered the look and color of the Yemeni rial banknote. Such a move has invited daily hurdles for civilians in Yemen, particularly after the Houthis banned the freshly printed bills. A Yemeni traveling from the south to the north needs to be ready with the Houthi-approved banknotes or a hard currency, such as the US dollar or the Saudi rial. With the government-printed money, nothing can be bought in Houthi-run areas. In 2016, the government relocated the operations of the Central Bank of Yemen from Sana'a to Aden, a move that worsened economic troubles, including inflation, unpaid salaries, and currency devaluation. While the UN has been trying to push the warring sides to agree to a political resolution to the conflict, the international body has also proposed initiatives, including Stockholm Agreement, to help address the economic crisis in the country. Thus far, all attempts have hit a dead end, and the UN describes Yemen as the world's largest humanitarian crisis. According to a local economist, Yemen's warring sides have miserably failed to prevent the currency's fall or agree on specific procedures to help the economy. The Houthi militia and the Yemeni government should have maintained the neutrality of the central bank. Unfortunately, they employed the financial institutions in the country to serve their purposes.
The National Committee Against Coronavirus recorded 5 new cases of the pandemic. Committee officials said 1 death and 13 cases of recovery were recorded. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 11,746, including 2,124 deaths and 8,580 cases of recovery. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. International rights organization called for the need to protect civilians in Marib, especially children. Houthi mines continue to claim lives of people in newly liberated areas in Hodeidah. Military experts are voicing concerns over the expanding use of drones, especially by terrorist groups. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.